Hello everyone. In this video I'm quickly going to show you how the Python API works for the PvP AI programming contest and what you need to run it. And we will go over the example code for a basic bot which just spams master archers. So first of all, what you need to do is go to this forum page here which announces the event, and I would highly recommend filling out the questionnaire first so we know that you want to participate. And then via this link you can get to the to a Discord server which we created just for this event. And in here you will find a lot of useful information. For example, under announcements you can tell us which programming language you want to use, and especially this instructions channel where you will see how you can actually run your bot, but we'll get back to that later. Okay, so what you need to get is, first of all, you need to go to this GitLab page, the Skylords Reborn Bot API Python. It's currently still private, but it's soon to be public, and then you can just download it. If you have never used Git before, don't worry, just go over here to the download button, and then you can download it as a zip file, and then extract all of the source code, and you don't need to worry about anything else. If you know how Git works, you can just clone it as you would do on, for example, GitHub as well. And this will give you all the source code. What you will need to run is, first of all, you need the latest version of Python, which is currently 3.12. Just go to python.org and downloads, and then here you can see version 3.12. I would highly recommend getting this version because there are some features which will probably not work on older versions. If there's a newer version by the time you see this, also feel free to check that one out. Okay, and the last thing that is not necessary, but I would highly recommend, is getting some kind of IDE to code in, because this is much easier than just using some plain text editors. And there are like two very popular ones which I can recommend. The first is VS Code or VS Codium, which is basically just a fork of VS Code with without the telemetry in it. And you can download this from vscodium.com, and I also have that open here. And in that you can just open all of your files and you can code in them. And for example, if we go to the example bot, you get syntax highlighting, auto-completing, and so on. But I would highly recommend going to the extensions and getting a few extensions, especially the Python extension if you want to code in Python, and maybe a few more, such as whether is it here MyPy, which gives you some more error hints and stuff like that. Okay, the other version would be PyCharm, which is by the JetBrains company. There is the professional version, which costs you money, but there's also a free version of it if you go to download and then scroll down a bit. Here you see the community edition, which is free and open source, and you can also download that and use it. And this is also what I typically use. I also have that open here, and it just works as well. Here you don't need a plugin to run Python. There are plugins, but they are not necessary. And also I will show you how to configure this later. Okay, then once you downloaded all of the source code and opened it in an IDE of your choice, I would recommend setting up some like a running configuration. For example, you go up here to the run button, and then the run with the three dots, you can actually set up configurations. Go to edit configuration. I already added one. You can add a new one with this plus symbol here. I called it example bot, and you have to choose your Python interpreter. I'm using 3.12, the latest one. And then in here, the script you want to call is called run.py. We will take a look at that later. And then the path to your to the bot you want to run. I'm just using example/example.py, and the port you want to run it on. If you do not specify a port, it will default to 7079. And also specify the working directory, which I've done here. It's just the path to where I downloaded the source code earlier. And if you've done this and configured everything else correct and press run, then your bot should start running. But before you can do that, you actually need to install the requirements listed in requirements.txt. You can either search these on Google and install them manually, or if you have pip installed, which usually comes together with Python, you can do it by doing pip install -r and then requirements.txt, and then it will download all of the requirements in the latest version. Okay, once that's out of the way, first I will show you how you can actually test the bot, and then we will go over what the bot, like how the source code looks. So for now I'm just going to use the run example bot button up here, and now it is running. Then now we have to open the game, Battleforge actually. First of all, run the updater once, so your game is up to date. I've already done this. And then you start the game, either if you're on Linux with this command, but if you are on Windows, you can go to instructions, and Kubik provided a batch script for that, which just is basically the same command but for Windows. And then you execute that, and it should open the game with some debugging options available, and you can log in. Here you go. Now you're on the test server where you have all cards available, and here you can actually test your bot. And if you're wondering how you can test your bot, you have to edit a file which is in your documents folder, Battleforge, where you usually also find your logs and files like that. And there's a file called config debug.json. And here you find this tab AI, which should have been added once you started the test server. And it has this field URLs. And here you just add the URL of your bot, which is http:// and then 127.0.0.1 means it's running on your local machine, which is highly recommended. And then another colon and the port you specified. And I just use the default port 7079 for that as well. And once if this is all set up correctly, you should be able to run your bot in game. If you have any problems running your bot in game, just close your game, edit this file, make sure everything is correct, and then start the game again. Maybe it takes 1 or 2 retries. And then once you've done that, you go to the sparring grounds, create a game. I'm going to use a map Alien Spectator. I'm here on the first position, and now I will show you how you can actually load an AI. Everything AI related is done via the chat command /AI:, space, and now first I will do list, which should list us all of the available AIs which are currently running. And you see Python example bot master archer spam is already loaded. So now we can actually see what deck it is using and load it into the game. All of the commands available are also listed here in the instructions in Discord. And we will just do this, AI add name deck slot index. So we will do AI add, and it was name deck slot index. So the name is Python example bot. Python example bot. The deck is what is given in colons. It's MA_spam. And then the slots, here they start with 1, 2, 6, but internally they are actually 0 to 5. So this is slot 0, 1, 2, and this is actually slot 3. So I'm going to use 3. And now the Python example bot should be in slot 4 and already marked himself as ready. So now we can just press ready and start playing against the bot. And as you can see, I'm not clicking anything, but the example bot keeps on spamming master archers, and it will just attack our first monument. And this is all the bot does for now, and we will take a look at how this is implemented in just a second. Okay, so now that I've seen how you can actually test the bot and that it actually works, let's go over the source code. So back here in the source code, we can actually kill the bot right now. We don't need to run it anymore. So as we've specified here in our running configuration, the entry point for our program is this run.py file. And this basically, when you run it, it takes two arguments. First of all, the path to where your bot lies. In our case, it was example/example.py and the port. And as you see, there are two different directories in here and a few other files. For example, the readme.md gives some explanation, and also the api.md, which is probably the technical explanation for how you actually use the API that's provided by the game. And everything, so if you want, you can actually create your own wrapper around this API with your own HTTP client and so on. But we've already provided you with an example wrapper and an example HTTP implementation. So if you don't know anything about this, don't worry, you're covered. So what you see in this API directory are a few helper files, such as this helpers.py class, which just gives some useful implementations. There is maps.py, which is just an enumeration of all the maps which are in the game. And cardtemplate.py, which is just the IDs of all the cards. So if you, for example, need the ID of, I don't know, let's say Northguards, then you see, okay, they have ID 253, and you can access that in your code. And there's also this file called types.py, which basically lists all types related to the API, which might be useful. For example, if you want to look at all the available commands, just look for API command, and then you can see all of them. There's build house, cast spell god multi, produce squad, and so on. So if you need any specific data type and want to read more about it, this is where you will find it. And next there is this file called Wrapper.py, which is the example implementation of the HTTP client, or HTTP server, which we provided. So there's this function run, which basically just runs the HTTP server on 127.0.0.1, so the local host, on a given port. And here these functions, tick endpoint, start endpoint, and so on, are basically just a wrapper around the API. If you are really proficient in Python, you can if you want to improve it, write your own implementation. If you want, you can also give us some feedback on that. But if you don't know what any of this means, don't worry, you don't have to. So now the first thing that is interesting for most of you probably is this class called bot impl, or bot implementation. This is basically, it's called an abstract base class, or ABC for short. And it's basically just a blueprint of what your bot should look like. So your bot implementation has to be a class, which is derived from bot implementation. I will show you in the example file in a second how this actually looks. And it has to have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 methods at least. It can have more if you want, but this is all it definitely needs. It needs a constructor, which takes a map info and a DAG API as its parameters. And if you want to know more about the map info type and DAG API type, you will also find that in here. Map info, for example, here. Yeah, here you can see more about the class map info type. Next, it needs a function called name, which just gives the name of the bot, which you can think of as whatever name you want. This DEX4map function, which takes a map info as its input and gives a list of DEX as its output. A match start function and a tick function. So what is basically done is the name is basically only called when you do the list AI command in game. Then it gives you the name which you've specified in this method. The DEX4map tells you if you, for a given map, for example, we used Alien Spectator earlier, this will give you a list of all the decks that your bot can play on that map. In our case, it was just the Master Archer spam deck. Match start is a function that is only called once when the game starts, like at the first tick of the game, where you can do some preparations. For example, you can take take a look at info from the map and do some computations from that and so on. And most importantly, there's this function called tick, which is called every single tick of the game, so every 100 milliseconds. And this is where actually all of the logic of your bot happens. So let's take a look at how this is done in the example.py class. So here there's a main function, which is just a small wrapper, which creates like here the alien spectator map and calls this text for map and so on. So don't worry too much about this. And the actual implementation is in this class, which I called myBot, which is the example bot. And as you see, it has to derive two things, or has to inherit two things. First of all, the bot impl, which is this one, and base model, which you can see up here is imported from the Pydantic, which we installed earlier. And then we have these 5 classes, I think. The init class, then the name, dex for map, match start, and tick. And the other ones I just created additionally, which are just some helpers, which are really short. For example, set team sets the team of this object to whatever you to whatever input you give it. Okay, so first of all, let's take a look at what the constructor of the example bot does. Well, it calls the super, which you always have to do when you inherit from a different class, which basically just calls the constructor of the upper class. Don't worry too much about that, just add that line. And then it does some initialization, so it sets its ID to 0, its team to 0, the opponents to an empty list, the start position to 0, and the deck is just whatever deck you've given in. And so this is basically just creates a bot which knows nothing yet, so it doesn't even know what ID it has, but it will get that later. So now for the name function, it just returns the name Python example bot, but you can name your bot whatever you want. The only thing is it has to be constant whenever you call it, so you cannot do any calculations in here, just give a name. Now the dex for map function, what this does is you get a map info and then you return a list of decks. For example, the Master Archer Spam deck, which I created, just has these 4 cards in it. Master Archers, Ice Barrier, Home Soil, Cliff of Frost. And you have to fill up all of the empty spots with not a card. And how you actually get a card is by importing card template up here. So you type from api.cardtemplate import card template. And then the individual, so this will give you access to this class. And in order to get any of the variations, you just type card template dot whatever card you want. So this creates a deck with only these 4 units or these 4 cards in it, and the other slots are all empty. Okay, then this is wrapped into this type deck API, which should be returned instead of a list of cards. And what this does is basically just gives it a name, Master Archer Spam, the cover card index. So when you click ready in game, it always shows like 1 card on top of your deck, and it just says the card from index 0, so which is Master Archers, and then the cards in the deck, which is just what we created up here. And for, what you can do in this function basically is check what the map is, and then also you choose like some decks specifically to a map. For example, if you want other decks on Alien than you want on Haladur, then you can just match mapinfo.map, and then here you can have different cases, which is so match in Python is basically like a switch in other languages, and you basically have cases for all the different maps, and you can choose which maps or which decks should be available on which map. For the example bot, I just ignore all of this checking and just return the Master Archer Spam deck, and it has to be wrapped into a list. So you could also have like multiple decks available. For example, you have the Master Archer Spam deck and like 2 of the 3 PvP decks. Then you would do a list of Master Archer Spam deck, Infused Flame, and Tainted Flora or something like that. And this then in game we would see that it has 3 decks available which we can choose from. Okay, so this is the decks for map function, which should be rather simple to understand. Next, the match start function, which is called once when the game starts. It takes this API game start state as an input and does not return anything. So what this function does for the example bot is it basically just takes from the start state the player ID and sets the player ID of the bot to whatever it read from this game start state. And it creates this variable called entities, which is basically just all the entities it gets from the game via this API game start state parameter. And then what this does, it loops over all the entities, and depending on what it is, it does different things with it. For example, if the entity is a player, so actually a player kid, so you and your opponent are both players, and it checks, okay, if the entity ID is the same as the player ID, then the team of the bot is set to whatever team is read from the game start state or from the entity. Then if it's a power slot, then it just, for example, if we were to take a look at the logs earlier, then it would have said I own power well, and then the ID at a position. So here you can see how you can actually get stuff like that. So you see if the class, so the type of the entity which we've looped over, is a power slot, and it's the owner ID is our current ID. We know this is a power slot which is ours. And then we can see, okay, it has a unique ID which identifies it. And you can also get the position by saying identity.specific.position. And this position type is also what is used, for example, for targeting attacks later, which we'll see in the tick function. And here also, if it's a token, then it says, okay, I own also a monument. And not only that, but it also sets the starting point of the bot to be the position of this monument, so it knows where its main base is. Okay, and afterwards it loops again over the entities and looks if it finds entities of the enemy team, so it does the same thing again. And if it finds a player which is not the same team as the own team, then this is going to be added to our opponents. So we know, okay, this is one of the opponents we need to attack. So as you see, this function basically just does all of these kinds of preparations. So you find out where your stuff is, you find out where your opponent's stuff is, and whatever else you want to prepare at the start of the game. Now the tick function, which is called repeatedly during the game, it takes the game state as an input and returns a list of API commands. So basically gives a list of all the commands which your bot should do at any given tick. And for the master archer example, here you can see it also just reading some stuff from the state, like the current tick and the entities, and print some info like, okay, this is the current tick, and like is the number of entities which is currently on the map. It creates 3 things: my army, the target, and power, which will all be just set to default values and then read from the state. So if it finds a squad and the ID is of the squad is the same as the player ID, then this will be added to my army. So basically what this does, it looks at all squads on the map, and if they belong to the bot itself, it will register it in this my army list. And if it's a token slot and it's an opponent's token slot, then it will be set as target. And finally, if it's a player and the player is yourself, then it just reads the power and sets it as my power. So these lines basically read what the current army of the bot is, where the opponent's monument is, and how much power the bot has. And then it prints that information as well. For example, here you can still see this input. So current tick was 242. Entities count on the map was 167. Don't worry why it's that much, because there are like also all of the trees and the map decoration also count into that. And here it says, okay, the target was the ID 2651, which was my monument, and the bot at that point had 15.086 and so on power, and it owned these 4 units, which were all master archers. Okay, then now, once it has read all of that info, so what army it has, what target it has, and how much power it has, now we come to the point where it actually creates the commands which it should do at this tick. So first it checks, do I have more than 50 power, which is the power cost of a master archer. And if it does, then we have this spawn, which is a new variable, which is basically just an API command which says to spawn a unit. So API command produce squad. And then card position is equal to 0. And this card position argument is the same card position as earlier here in the deck you are using. So card position 0 is master archers, card position 1 is ice barrier, card position 2 is home soil, and so on. And then a position where it should be spawned, xy is equal to self.getStart, and the start we earlier set in our preparation to be the starting monument, which we had here. The starting monument of the bot, and so it will, every tick, if it has more than 50 power, spawn a master archer, which is card position 0, at the starting monument. And then lastly, it also checks if the target is not none. So because the target was originally none, but if we found an enemy monument, then the target was set to be not none, but actually an ID. And also if the length of army is greater than 0, so if you actually have some units, then we can give those units an attacking command, which is API command group attack. And the squads are obviously my army, but you could also just use part of that, and then another part would go somewhere else. The target entity ID is the enemy monument, which we've scanned earlier. And force attack is what this does is, like you know in game, when you press a Q and click somewhere, then your units will walk there and attack anything they see on the way. If you set this to true, then this will be this attack walk command. If you set it to false, then it will just attack the monument and ignore anything it sees on the way. And in both cases, we append that to this commands variable, which is an empty list before that. And then we just return the commands, which could be nothing. It could be just a spawn, just an attack, or both. And then this is sent back to the game, and the game executes those 2 commands. All right. And this was a quick rundown over how this example bot works. I hope it was somehow understandable. If you have any questions, feel free to join this Discord server for the AI programming contest. And here you can ask questions in whatever channel, like here in the general chat, or API usage if you have some specific questions about how these API types work or stuff like that. Or also if you have like specific questions about how Python works, just go to the Python channel and leave a question there. And we will be glad if we can help you. All right, with that, I wish you all some happy coding and see you then. Bye.